Ending operations. How many people? 20. Experienced? Loyal? I'm done playing small. Anya laughed. Lucien's going to love this. Lucien can deal with it? Elena's smile was sharp. This is my territory now. She hung up and got back to work. Because the woman who'd once been bait had become a queen, and queens didn't apologize for claiming their crowns. They wore them, and they dared the world to try and take them. I watched him kill 3 men before he ever said my name. The bullet passed so close to my face I felt the heat sear my cheek. Glass exploded. Blood sprayed across marble floors. And Lucien Devereaux, the man who orchestrated my kidnapping, who claimed he loved me, stood over their bodies without a single tremor in his hands. This is the story of how a 24-year-old grocery warehouse worker from Chicago's South Side fell in love with a monster, how obsession became salvation, how I chose darkness willingly. If you want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes, stay until the end. Drop a like, comment your city, so I can see how far this story travels. Because what happens next, you won't believe. The rain that night wasn't poetic. It was cold, mean, the kind that soaked through cheap jackets and reminded you exactly where you stood in the world's hierarchy. Lyra Vale hunched beneath the broken awning of Rosie's cafe. Her phone screen cracked so badly she had to tilt it 3 different ways to read the message. Still coming. Traffic, 20 minutes. She should have canceled, should have stayed home in her studio apartment where the heat barely worked, but at least she controlled who walked through the door. Instead, she was standing outside this sad little cafe on 47th Street because her coworker Mallory had set her up on a blind date with a really nice guy from her gym. And Lyra was too tired to keep saying no to everything. 24 years old, and she'd already perfected the art of disappearing. Double shifts at the warehouse left her hands perpetually raw, her back aching, her bank account hovering just above empty. Student loans she'd never finish paying, a dead-end job, a life so small it fit inside a 300-square-foot box. But at least it was predictable, safe, hers. The cafe door chimed when she finally pushed inside. The warmth hit her face, smelling like burnt coffee and grease. 3 people scattered across the booths. An elderly man reading yesterday's newspaper, a woman with a laptop and expensive headphones, a kid in a hoodie picking at French fries. Normal. Boring. Exactly what she needed. Lyra chose a booth in the back corner, facing the door like her father taught her before he disappeared when she was 9. Always see who's coming. She ordered black coffee because it was cheapest, wrapped her hands around the chipped mug, and waited for a man she'd probably never see again after tonight. The clock above the counter ticked past 7:50 and 7:30. Her date wasn't coming. She knew that hollow feeling in her gut, the specific flavor of disappointment that tasted like every other time someone decided she wasn't worth the effort. Mallory would apologize tomorrow, say he got busy, offer to set her up with someone else. And Lyra would smile and say sure, even though they both knew she wouldn't follow through. She was reaching for her coat when the door opened. The temperature in the room dropped. 3 men entered and the cafe stopped breathing. Not metaphorically. The elderly man's newspaper froze mid-turn. The woman's fingers hovered above her keyboard. The kid's fork hung suspended over his plate. Even the fluorescent light seemed to dim, like the building itself recognized predators when they walked in. The first 2 were muscle. Obvious security, bulked shoulders straining against tailored black suits, hands hovering near concealed weapons, eyes scanning the room with military precision. They moved like men who'd killed before and would kill again without losing sleep. But the third man, Lucien Devereaux, walked like he owned the air everyone else was borrowing. Mid-20s, maybe. Tall and lean beneath a black wool coat that probably cost more than Lyra's yearly rent. Dark hair pushed back from a face too sharp to be pretty, too intense to be safe. Pale skin. Storm gray eyes that cut through the room like searchlights. He looked at the elderly man. The man grabbed his newspaper and left. He looked at the woman. She packed her laptop and walked out without a word. He looked at the kid. Gone. Then those eyes found Lyra, and everything inside her body locked down. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away from the weight of that gaze pinning her to the booth like a butterfly under glass. Some primal part of her brain was screaming run, but her legs had stopped taking orders. Lucien crossed the cafe in 4 strides, sat down across from her. folded his hands on the table between them with terrifying calm. "Lyra Vale," he said. Not a question, a statement. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that never had to rise to be obeyed. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this." Her mouth was dry. "I think you have the wrong person." "I don't." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. 24 years old, lives alone on Ashland Avenue, 3rd floor, apartment 3C. Works the overnight shift at Morrison's warehouse Tuesday through Saturday. Drinks black coffee. Reads Stephen King novels on the bus. Hasn't spoken to your mother in 6 years. Ice flooded her veins. "What the fuck?" "You smiled," Lucian interrupted softly. 3 weeks ago, Thursday night, just after midnight. It was raining, and you were standing outside Morrison's waiting for the bus. No umbrella, soaked through, and you looked up at the sky and smiled like it was the funniest thing in the world. Lyra's heart hammered against her ribs. She glanced toward the door, calculating distance, odds, whether she could reach it before his men moved. The 2 guards had positioned themselves at the entrance and the counter, boxing her in. "I'm leaving," she said, pushing to stand. "Sit down." It wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive. But something in the absolute certainty of those 2 words made her knees buckle, and she dropped back into the booth before her brain caught up with her body. Lucian's expression didn't change. "You're not in danger from me." "Then why do I feel like I'm about to die?" The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "Because you're smarter than most people I meet." "Who are you?" "Someone who's been looking for something real in a world built on lies." He leaned forward slightly, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Gunpowder, maybe. Or blood. "And then I saw you smiling in the rain like a woman who understood the joke of existence, and I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were going to change my life." She laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out sharp and brittle and slightly unhinged. "I stock shelves for $9 an hour. I eat ramen 3 times a week. I'm nobody." "You're everything," Lucian said quietly. "You just don't know it yet." Before Lyra could respond, the cafe door exploded inward. A man stumbled through, young and wild-eyed, blood streaming from his nose. His shirt was torn, his hands were shaking, and when he saw Lucian, he screamed, "Deveros! Please, so—" One of the guards moved like lightning. He had the man by the throat and dragged him backward through the door before Lyra could blink. The door swung shut. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw them throw him into the back of a black SUV. The entire thing took 6 seconds. Lucian never looked away from her. "What the fuck was that?" Lyra's voice cracked. "What the fuck is happening?" "A mistake," Lucian said calmly. "He shouldn't have found us here." "Found us?" "You mean found you?" She was on her feet now, adrenaline overriding fear. "Who was that? What did he want?" "To beg for his life." The words were so casual, so matter-of-fact, that it took her brain a moment to process them. "You're going to kill him." "No." Lucien stood, buttoning his coat with precise movements. "I'm going to let my people handle it." "Same thing." "Close enough." Lyra grabbed her coat, her bag, everything in her screaming to get out, get away, get anywhere but here. She pushed past Lucien toward the door, and his hand shot out catching her wrist. Not hard. Not painful, but immovable. "Let go of me," she hissed. "I can't do that." "The fuck you can't?" "Lyra?" Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer and a threat. "The moment that man saw us together, you became a target. Every enemy I have will now assume you matter to me." "I don't matter to you. I don't even know you." "They don't know that." His thumb brushed across her pulse point, feeling it hammer beneath her skin. "And by tomorrow, your face will be on a dozen different intelligence networks across 3 continents. You have one choice now." "And what's that?" "You come with me. You let me protect you until I've eliminated the threat. And then, if you still want to leave," his eyes bored into hers, "I'll let you go." "You're insane." "Probably." He released her wrist. "But you're going to get in my car anyway." "Why would I do that?" "Because you're already dead if you don't." Lyra wanted to call him a liar, wanted to scream for help, run into the street, flag down a cop. But something in the flat certainty of his voice made her believe him, made her understand that she'd already crossed a line just by sitting in that booth. Outside, the black SUV was waiting. Rain hammered the roof. The guards held umbrellas. Lucien extended his hand. Trust is earned. I know that. But right now you don't have the luxury of waiting. She looked at his hand, at his face, at the door behind her that led back to her tiny apartment, her dead-end job, her safe little life that had just been incinerated the moment he said her name. If you're lying, she said slowly, if this is some sick game, it's not. How do I know? You don't. He stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. But you know what happens if you walk away alone. You've already done the math. He was right. She'd grown up on Chicago's South Side. She knew how this worked. You didn't get seen with men like this and walk away clean. Lyra took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. Good girl, he murmured. Something in those words made her want to hit him and kiss him at the same time. The SUV smelled like leather and gun oil. The interior was bulletproof glass, reinforced doors, privacy partition between them and the driver. Lucien sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the heat radiating off his body. They drove in silence through rain-soaked streets, past her neighborhood, past the warehouse, past every familiar landmark until the city gave way to suburbs, then estates, then something else entirely. Where are we going? Lyra asked. Home. You're home. For now. The gates appeared out of darkness, 15 feet of wrought iron and steel, flanked by guard towers. They rolled through into a driveway that curved through manicured grounds lit by spotlights. The house at the end wasn't a house. It was a fortress dressed as a mansion. Stone and glass and sharp angles, 3 stories of wealth and power and fuck you money. The SUV stopped beneath a covered entrance. Lucien got out first, then offered his hand again. She ignored it, climbing out on her own. The guards watched her with expressionless faces. This way, Lucien said. The interior was exactly what she expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably belonged in museums. But there were other details too. Security cameras in every corner, reinforced doors, windows that didn't reflect quite right because they were bulletproof. This wasn't a home. It was a compound. Lucien led her through hallways and upstairs to a bedroom suite that was bigger than her entire apartment. King bed, private bathroom, walk-in closet filled with clothes that looked suspiciously like her size. You planned this, she said quietly. I prepared for it. What's the difference? Intent. He moved to the door. You're safe here. My people will be outside. If you need anything, I need to leave. Lucien paused, his hand on the doorframe. When he looked back at her, something flickered behind those cold gray eyes, something almost human. I know you're scared, he said. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I made you a promise in that cafe, and I keep my promises. What promise? That you're not in danger from me. He stepped into the hallway. Get some sleep, Lyra. Tomorrow, I'll explain everything. The door closed. A lock clicked. She was alone. Lyra moved to the window, pressing her hands against the cold glass. The ground stretched out below, spotlights cutting through rain. She counted 6 guards patrolling. Probably more she couldn't see. Her phone was still in her pocket. She pulled it out, the cracked screen glowing weakly. No signal. Of course. They'd have jammers. She should be panicking, should be breaking down, should be crying. Instead, she felt weirdly calm, because somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the adrenaline, beneath every rational thought screaming that this was wrong, there was something else, something she didn't want to acknowledge. When Lucien had looked at her in that cafe, when he'd said she was going to change his life, she'd felt seen for the first time in years, not as the broke girl working dead-end jobs, not as the daughter her mother abandoned, not as the woman everyone overlooked, as someone who mattered, and that feeling was dangerous as fuck. She didn't sleep, couldn't. Every sound made her flinch, footsteps in the hallway, rain against glass, the low rumble of engines outside. She spent the hours scrolling through her phone's saved files, looking at photos from a life that already felt like it belonged to someone else. When dawn broke gray and cold, the door unlocked. A woman entered carrying a breakfast tray, older, sharp-featured, dressed in black tactical gear with a holstered weapon visible at her hip. She set the tray on the dresser without a word and left. Lyra stared at the food. Toast, eggs, fresh fruit, coffee that smelled expensive. Her stomach growled despite everything. She was eating when Lucien appeared in the doorway. Different clothes, dark jeans, black shirt, no coat. He looked younger in daylight, more human until you got to the eyes. Those were still predator sharp. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "What do you think?" "I think you're tougher than you look." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I need to show you something." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes, you are." Not aggressive, just certain. "Because you want answers, and I'm the only one who can give them to you." He was right. She hated that he was right. Lucien led her down through the mansion to a room she hadn't seen. Windowless, climate-controlled, lined with monitors and screens. A command center. 3 people worked at stations, headsets on, fingers flying across keyboards. He pulled up a chair in front of the main screen. "Sit." She did because her legs were shaking. Lucien tapped a keyboard. Images flooded the screen. Newspaper articles, police reports, surveillance photos. All of them focused on one thing, him. "My name is Lucien Devereaux," he said quietly. "I'm 26 years old. I control the largest private weapons trafficking network in North America. I have financial interests in 17 countries, political leverage over 43 elected officials, and law enforcement assets in every major city from Montreal to Mexico City." Lyra's mouth went dry. "You're telling me you're a criminal?" "I'm telling you I'm an empire." He clicked to another screen. More photos, burnt buildings, body bags, crime scene tape. "These are the people who tried to take what's mine in the last 5 years. None of them succeeded. Because you killed them. Because I protected what belongs to me." He turned to face her, and the weight of his attention was crushing. "I inherited this at 15 when my mother was murdered by rivals. I didn't choose this life, Lyra. It chose me. And I learned one lesson. Control everything, or everything controls you." "What does this have to do with me?" "Everything." He pulled up a final image, grainy surveillance footage of her standing outside Morrison's warehouse, looking up at the rain, smiling. "I saw you 3 weeks ago. I had business near your work, and I saw you standing there in the rain, laughing at something no one else could see. And for the first time in 11 years, I felt something other than anger." Her throat tightened. "Obsession isn't love." "I never said it was love." His voice dropped. "I said you were going to change my life. And the moment I decided that, you became the most valuable target my enemies have. Then let me go. Tell them you made a mistake." "It's too late for that." He leaned closer, and she smelled gunpowder again. "The man who came into that cafe last night, he's dead. He was a low-level runner for the Volkov Syndicate, and before my people ended him, he sent photos of us to his boss. By now, every criminal organization with a grudge against me knows your face." Ice crawled down her spine. "You're lying." Lucien pulled out his phone, showed her a message thread in Cyrillic. She couldn't read it, but the photo was clear. Her and Lucien at the cafe table, his hand on her wrist. "They think you're important to me," he said flatly. "So now you are." "I didn't ask for this." "Neither did I." His jaw tightened. "But I'm not letting them take you." Lyra stood so fast the chair fell backward. "You did this. You walked into that cafe. You said my name. You made me a target just because you saw me smiling in the fucking rain." "Yes." The admission stopped her cold. "I did this," Lucien continued, standing to face her. "I saw something I wanted and I took it without considering the consequences. That's who I am. That's what I do." "You're a monster." "I know." He stepped closer. "But I'm the only thing standing between you and worse monsters." "How long?" Her voice cracked. "How long do I have to stay here?" "Until the threat is neutralized. Days? Weeks? However long it takes." She wanted to scream, to break something, to hit him hard enough to make him feel a fraction of what she was feeling. Instead, she laughed, that same brittle sound from the cafe. "I have a job, bills, a life. I'll handle it." "You'll handle it," she repeated slowly. "You'll just..." "What? Pay my rent? Call my boss? Tell them I've been kidnapped by a fucking crime lord? Your boss thinks you're taking a family emergency leave. Your rent is paid for the next 6 months. Your student loans are frozen." He said it like he was reading a grocery list. You don't exist in your old life anymore. You can't just erase someone. I can do anything I want. The terrifying part was he believed it, and worse, she believed him too. Lyra backed toward the door, hands shaking. I need air. You can't leave the grounds. Then show me the fucking grounds. Something that might have been approval crossed his face. This way. He led her through French doors onto a terrace that overlooked the estate. The rain had stopped, leaving everything gleaming and cold. Gardens stretched out in geometric patterns. A black iron fence marked the perimeter, topped with cameras. How many people work for you? She asked. Here? 32? Globally? I stopped counting. And they all know what you do? They profit from what I do. He leaned against the railing beside her, not quite touching. Loyalty is expensive. I pay better than conscience. She should hate him. Every moral fiber should be recoiling. But when she looked at him in the gray morning light, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone who'd been forced to become one. Your mother, she said quietly. How did it happen? His hands tightened on the railing. Car bomb. Meant for my father. He died 3 months earlier from cancer, so they went after the next in line. You. She got in my car that morning, turned the ignition. His voice was flat, empty. I was 15 feet away, close enough to see everything, not close enough to stop it. Lyra felt something crack in her chest. I'm sorry. Don't be. He turned to face her, and those gray eyes were winter cold again. It made me what I needed to be. Alone? The word hung between them like a blade. Lucian's jaw worked. Alive. They stood in silence, and Lyra realized with creeping horror that she understood him, understood what it meant to choose survival over everything else. She'd been doing it her whole life, working dead-end jobs, living in a shoebox, making herself invisible so the world wouldn't crush her. They were the same, just different scales. I need to call my friend, she said finally. Mallory, she'll be worried. I'll arrange it, supervised. Of course. She laughed bitterly. Prisoner with phone privileges. Guest with complications. Fuck you. His mouth curved slightly. You keep saying that like it'll change something. Maybe it will. It won't. He pushed off the railing. But I like that you try. He started to walk away, and before she could stop herself, she called out, Why me? Lucian paused, looked back, and for just a moment the mask cracked, and she saw something raw underneath. Because you smiled like you'd already lost everything and decided it was funny, he said quietly. And I've never wanted anything more than to be someone who could make you smile like that again. Then he was gone, and Lyra was alone on the terrace, with her heart hammering and her mind screaming, and the terrible realization settling in her bones. She was starting to understand him. And understanding was the first step towards something far more dangerous. The first 3 days passed like fever dreams. Lyra woke up in silk sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, ate food prepared by chefs whose names she'd never learn, and walked through hallways patrolled by men who'd kill her without hesitation if Lucian gave the order. The routine should have numbed her. Instead, every hour sharpened the edges of her awareness until she felt like she was breathing ground glass. She saw Lucian in fragments, passing in hallways, always surrounded by people speaking in rapid-fire sentences about shipments and payments and names that meant nothing to her. Sitting in his office visible through glass walls, phone pressed to his ear, face carved from stone. Standing on the terrace at 2 a.m, smoking cigarettes she didn't know he used, staring at something she couldn't see. He'd given her freedom within the cage. She could go anywhere on the grounds, use the library, the gym, the pool. But the invisible leash never loosened. Guards followed at a distance. Cameras tracked her movements, and every night she heard the lock click on her bedroom door. On the 4th morning, she broke. The woman who brought breakfast, her name was Irina, one of Lucien's security team, found Lyra sitting on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to her chest, breathing too fast. I need to leave, Lyra gasped. I can't. Irina crouched down, surprisingly gentle for someone who carried 3 weapons. Breathe slower, count. I don't want to count. I want to go home. There is no home. Irina's accent was thick, Eastern European. Not anymore. You understand this, yes? No, I don't understand any of this. Lyra's vision blurred. I don't understand why he's doing this, why he won't just let me disappear. Because he saw something in you. Irina stood, offered her hand, and Lucien never lets go of things he wants. That's not love, that's ownership. Maybe. Irina pulled her to her feet. But it keeps you alive. Lyra washed her face, changed clothes, and went looking for him. She found Lucien in his office, 3 men in expensive suits arranged around his desk like pieces on a chessboard. They went silent when she appeared in the doorway. Lucien's eyes cut to her, sharp and assessing. Give us the room, he said without looking at the others. They filed out. One of them, older, silver-haired, radiating authority, paused beside Lyra. You're braver than you look, girl. Or stupider, she muttered. He laughed. With him? Same thing. Then they were alone, and the silence pressed down like a physical weight. Lucien stood behind his desk, hands flat on the surface, watching her with that unnerving intensity that made her feel X-rayed. You shouldn't be in this part of the house, he said. Where should I be? My luxury prison cell? Your room isn't a cell. It has a lock. For your protection. From who? She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Your enemies or you? Something flickered across his face. Both. The honesty startled her. She crossed to the desk, keeping it between them like a barricade. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his features, shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw, a cut on his knuckle that looked fresh. You're bleeding, she said. Lucien glanced at his hand like he'd forgotten it existed. It's nothing. When did you sleep last? Why do you care? I don't. The lie tasted bitter. But you're not much use as a protector if you collapse. His mouth curved slightly. Worried about me, Lyra? Worried about being stuck here if you die. Honest. I like that. He moved around the desk, closing the distance between them, and she forced herself not to step back. What do you need? Answers. I've given you answers. You've given me pieces. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. You said I'm a target. Fine. Who specifically wants to kill me? How long until they stop? What's your plan besides keeping me locked up like some fucking fairy tale princess? The Volkov Syndicate. His voice was flat, clinical. Russian-born, now operating primarily out of New York and Chicago. They've been trying to move into my territory for 18 months. I've blocked them at every turn. They want leverage. Me. You. So give them something else. Money, territory, whatever they want. Lucien's eyes went cold. I don't negotiate. Then you're going to get me killed. No one is going to touch you. He said it with absolute certainty, like he could bend reality through will alone. I've already sent word through channels. Anyone who comes near you answers to me. That's not a plan. That's a threat. It's the only language they understand. Lyra laughed, sharp and ugly. You're insane. You've painted a target on my back, and your solution is to dare them to pull the trigger. My solution is to make them too afraid to try. And if they're not afraid, then I'll kill every single person they've ever loved until they are. The words should have horrified her, should have sent her running. Instead, she felt a sick pull of relief because at least his insanity had direction. How long? She asked quietly. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. He studied her face. The Volkovs are careful. They'll watch, wait, look for an opening. When they realize there isn't one, they'll move to other targets. And then I can leave. And then we'll discuss it. Discuss? Her voice rose. You said if I wanted to leave. I said I'd let you go. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek so lightly, she almost didn't feel it. I didn't say you'd want to. She slapped his hand away. Don't touch me? You liked it when I did. Fuck you. Not yet. He stepped back and the air rushed into the space between them. But you're thinking about it. I'm thinking about how to escape. Liar. His smile was knife sharp. You're thinking about why you haven't tried. The truth of it hit her like a fist to the gut. Because he was right. She could have tried. Could have attempted the gates, the walls. Could have screamed for help when guards changed shifts. But she hadn't. Because some sick part of her wanted to stay. wanted to understand him, wanted to be seen the way he saw her. I hate you, she whispered. I know. He moved toward the door. Dinner's at 7. Try to eat something. Where are you going? To handle business. He paused, looking back. Stay in the main house today. There's increased chatter on the networks. I don't want you outside. Afraid someone might take your toy? Afraid someone might take the only thing I care about. Then he was gone, and Lyra was alone with her heart hammering and the terrible realization that she'd stopped being his prisoner somewhere around the 3rd day. Now she was something worse. Complicit. Psych. She spent the afternoon in his library, a 2-story room lined with books that looked read rather than decorative. She'd expected business manuals, maybe some military strategy. Instead, she found poetry, philosophy, fiction worn soft with handling, Dostoevsky in Russian, Camus in French, Stephen King novels with dog-eared pages. He read the same books she did. The thought unsettled her more than the weapons or the guards or the casual violence. Because monsters weren't supposed to read, weren't supposed to underline passages or leave notes in margins or dog-ear pages at sentences that mattered. She was pulling down a copy of The Outsider when she heard raised voices from the hallway. Male, angry, getting closer. Lyra moved to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Completely fucking reckless. That was the silver-haired man from earlier. You bring her here, lock her down, and think the Volkovs won't see it as weakness? They'll see it as a warning. Lucien's voice, colder than she'd heard it. I protect what's mine. She's not yours. She's a civilian you've decided to play house with. Watch your tone, Marcus. Or what? You'll kill me too? A bitter laugh. I've stood by you for 11 years, Lucian. Watched you build this empire from blood and bullets. But this girl? She's going to burn everything we've worked for. Then let it burn. Silence. Heavy and dangerous. Marcus spoke again, quieter. You sound like your father. My father was weak. Your father was human. You've forgotten what that means. Being human got my mother killed. And being a monster will get this girl killed, Marcus's voice cracked. You think the Volkovs are your only problem? Every organization from here to Miami is watching this. They see you obsessed, distracted, vulnerable. They're circling, Lucian. Let them circle. They'll come for her. You know they will. I know. A pause. And I'll be waiting. Footsteps. Coming toward the library. Lyra scrambled back to the bookshelf, grabbing the King novel at random, forcing her breathing to steady. The door opened. Lucien stood there, tie loosened, that fresh cut on his knuckle split open again. You heard, he said. Not a question. Some of it. Marcus thinks I'm making a mistake. Is he right? Lucien crossed to where she stood, so close she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Probably. Then why not let me go? Cut your losses. Because losing you would be worse than any damage they could do. His hand came up, fingers threading through her hair, and this time she didn't pull away. Marcus doesn't understand. None of them do. Understand what? That I was already dead before I saw you. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I've been dead for 11 years, just a corpse walking around running an empire. And then you smiled in the rain and I felt something. Obsession isn't feeling, it's sickness. Maybe I'm sick then. He leaned closer, breath warm against her lips. But you're the only cure I've got. She should have pushed him away, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did next. Lyra kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic. It was teeth and desperation and fury, her hands fisting in his shirt while his arms locked around her waist. He tasted like cigarettes and coffee and something darker she couldn't name. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw something raw in his eyes. That was a mistake, she gasped. I don't care. I do. She shoved at his chest. This is insane. You're insane. I'm fucking insane for what? He caught her wrists, holding her still. For wanting me? For understanding me? For not running when I had the chance. There was never a chance. His grip tightened. The moment I walked into that cafe, your fate was sealed. You don't get to decide my fate. I already have. She jerked free, putting distance between them. Her lips still burned. Her hands were shaking. What happens when you get bored? When the obsession fades and I'm just another problem to handle? That won't happen. You can't know that. Yes, I can. He moved toward her again, predator slow. Because I've never wanted anything the way I want you. Not power, not control, not revenge. Just you. That's not love, Lucian. That's possession. Maybe. He backed her against the bookshelf. But you want to be possessed. No. Liar. His mouth brushed her ear. You kissed me back. You could have fought, could have screamed, could have run, but you didn't. Because I'm trapped here. You're trapped everywhere. His hands framed her face, forcing her to look at him. At least here, someone sees you. The words broke something open inside her chest. Because he was right. God help her. He was right. She'd spent her whole life being invisible. To her mother, to her bosses, to every person who'd looked past her like she was furniture. And here was this monster who'd burned down her entire existence just to make her the center of his world. I hate this, she whispered. I know. I hate you. I know that too. Then let me go. No. He kissed her forehead, gentle in a way that terrified her more than violence. But I'll try to make it easier. He stepped back, adjusting his tie, transforming back into the cold kingpin she'd first seen in the cafe. Dinner at 7. Wear something nice. Why? Because I want to see you in something other than jeans and anger. What if I don't come? Then I'll come get you. He moved to the door. And we both know you like it when I do. He left her alone among the books with her heart racing and the taste of him still on her lips, and the horrifying understanding that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She wore black because it felt like mourning. The dress appeared in her room at 6, simple, elegant, the kind of thing she'd never owned in her old life. It fit perfectly, of course. He'd probably had her measurements from the beginning. The thought should have creeped her out. Instead, she felt a sick thrill at being known that thoroughly. Irina appeared at 6:45 to escort her down. You look beautiful. I look like a doll he's dressing up. Same thing, Irina smiled slightly. But better than looking like a target. They walked through hallways Lyra was starting to recognize. The mansion was a labyrinth of power, offices where men made decisions that ended lives, conference rooms where territories were divided, surveillance centers where cameras watched everything, and underneath it all, the constant hum of violence waiting to happen. The dining room was intimate, small table, candles, windows overlooking the grounds where armed guards patrolled in the darkness. Lucien stood when she entered, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He looked at her like she was air. Beautiful, he said quietly. Don't. Don't what? Don't look at me like that? She sat down before her legs gave out. Like I'm something precious. You are. I'm a hostage playing dress-up. You're the woman who kissed me this afternoon and hasn't stopped thinking about it since. He poured wine into her glass. We're the same, Lyra. Stop pretending we're not. The food came in courses prepared by people she didn't see. Each dish was perfect, and she tasted none of it. The conversation flowed around them, small talk that felt surreal given the circumstances. He asked about her childhood. She answered in fragments, revealing more than she intended. He told her about growing up in this world, being groomed for violence before he understood what violence meant. Did you ever try to leave? She asked. Once. I was 17. He stared at his wine. Made it as far as the airport before Marcus found me. What did he do? Reminded me what happens to the people I care about when I'm not there to protect them. His jaw tightened. Showed me photos of my sister. She was 12, taken by rival organizations watching the house. Surveillance reports, threat assessments, all the ways they'd use her to get to me if I disappeared. You have a sister? Had. The word was flat. She died 6 years ago. Car accident. Or that's what the police report said. But you don't believe that. I believe she wanted out as badly as I did. He set down his glass. And I believe someone made sure she got her wish permanently. Lyra's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me the only lesson that matters. You can't escape this life. You can only control how much it takes from you. That's a horrible way to live. It's the only way I know. They finished eating in silence. When the plates were cleared, Lucien stood and offered his hand. Dance with me. There's no music. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen. Piano drifted through hidden speakers, something classical and melancholy. Now there is. She should have refused, should have gone back to her room, should have done anything except take his hand and let him pull her close in the middle of that dining room while guards watched through windows and the whole world waited to swallow them both. But she was tired of running from things that felt real. His hand settled at the small of her back. Hers rested on his shoulder. They moved slowly, barely dancing, mostly just swaying in place. She could feel his heartbeat against her chest, could smell his cologne mixed with cigarette smoke, could see the exhaustion in his face that he tried to hide from everyone else. "Why me?" she asked again. "Really, not the poetic bullshit about smiling in the rain. Why did you choose me to ruin your life over?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because you looked free. Standing there in the rain with nothing, laughing at everything. And I've never been free a day in my life. I wasn't free. I was broke and tired and one missed paycheck from homeless. But you were yours." His hand tightened on her waist. "No one owned you. No one controlled you. You belonged entirely to yourself. And I wanted that so badly I could taste it. So you took it from me." "Yes." No apology, no excuse, just admission. "I saw something I couldn't have, and I broke the rules to get it. That's who I am." "A monster." "You're monster." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "If you'll have me." The question hung between them like a blade, because that's what he was offering. Not freedom, not safety, just choice. The choice to walk into darkness willingly, knowing exactly what waited there. Lyra should have said no, should have demanded he let her leave, should have been smart enough to understand that men like him didn't change, didn't soften, didn't become anything other than what violence had made them. But she was tired of being invisible, tired of surviving instead of living, tired of pretending she didn't understand exactly what he meant when he said he'd never been free. "I don't know," she whispered. "That's not a no. It's not a yes either." "It's enough." He kissed her forehead. "For now." The music stopped. The moment broke. Lucian stepped back, suddenly all business again. "I need to make some calls. Irina will take you back to your room." "What's happening?" Marcus received intelligence. The Volkovs are moving faster than expected. He checked his phone, frowned. "There's chatter about a gathering tomorrow night. Neutral ground. They want to talk." "That's good, right? Talking is better than killing." His smile was winter cold. "In my world, talking is just foreplay before the killing starts." He left her there with Irina, who appeared from the hallway like a shadow given form. They walked back in silence, but Lyra felt the tension radiating off the other woman. "He's different with you," Irina said when they reached the bedroom door. "Different how?" "Human." She checked the hallway, lowered her voice. "I've worked for him 5 years, never seen him care about anything except results. But you make him sloppy." "Is that bad?" "Yes." Irina's eyes were hard. "Because sloppy gets you killed in this business. And if he dies protecting you, everyone who depends on him, me, Marcus, 32 people in this house alone, we all die too." The weight of it settled on Lyra's shoulders like concrete. "What do you want me to do?" "Want?" "Nothing." Irina opened the door. "But if you care about him at all, convince him to let you go before this meeting tomorrow. The Volkovs want blood. They'll get it one way or another." "You think they'll kill me?" "I think they'll try. And I think he'll burn the world down trying to stop them." She stepped back. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be ugly." The door closed. The lock clicked. Lyra stood in the dark room staring at nothing and realized with creeping horror that she'd already made her choice. Sometime between the library kiss and the dining room dance, she'd stopped seeing Lucien as her captor and started seeing him as something else. Not a savior, not a lover, something more dangerous than both. An equal. Someone as trapped, and desperate and hungry for connection as she'd been her whole life. And that understanding was going to get them both killed. She woke to gunfire. Not close. Somewhere on the grounds, sharp cracks that echoed through the pre-dawn darkness. Lyra rolled out of bed, heart hammering, and ran to the window. Spotlights swept across the lawn, guards ran in formation, and in the distance she saw flames. The door burst open, Irina dressed in full tactical gear, weapon drawn. Get dressed, now. What's happening? They're here! She threw clothes at Lyra, jeans, boots, a dark jacket. The Volkovs hit one of the outer buildings. Distraction. Lucien thinks the real attack is coming for the house. Lyra dressed with shaking hands. More gunfire. Closer now, shouting in Russian and English. The building's alarm system screamed to life. Irina grabbed her arm, dragged her into the hallway. Other guards rushed past, weapons ready. The mansion had transformed into a war zone in minutes. Where's Lucien? Lyra shouted over the noise. Command center, he's coordinating defense. They moved through hallways that felt suddenly unfamiliar in the chaos. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every corner could explode into violence. Irina kept Lyra behind her, weapons sweeping angles with professional efficiency. They were 3 corridors from the command center when the lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, red backup lighting that turned everything into a horror movie. Irina's radio crackled, voices speaking too fast to parse, then silence. Fuck, Irina breathed. What? They're inside. A door at the end of the hallway exploded outward. 3 men in black tactical gear poured through, weapons raised. Irina fired first, dropping one immediately. The other 2 scattered, returning fire. Bullets chewed through walls, glass shattered. Lyra dropped flat, hands over her head, while Irina moved like a dancer through the chaos. Another guard appeared from a side corridor, joining the fight. The hallway became a shooting gallery. Lyra crawled behind an overturned table, making herself as small as possible, while men died around her with sounds she'd remember forever. When the silence came, it was worse than the noise. Irina appeared above her, breathing hard, blood on her face. You hurt? No, I don't think so. Good. Move. They ran. Past bodies Lyra tried not to look at, through smoke that burned her lungs, down stairs that felt like descending into hell. The command center door was reinforced steel, locked from inside. Irina pounded on it. It's me! Open up! The locks disengaged. The door swung open. And there was Lucien. He looked like war personified. Blood on his shirt, gun in his hand, eyes burning with something between rage and relief when he saw Lyra. He grabbed her, pulled her inside, held her against his chest for 3 seconds while the world burned around them. You're okay, he said against her hair. What's happening? They breached the perimeter, 4 entry points, professional team. He released her, moved back to the monitors showing feeds from around the property. This isn't about talking. This is about sending a message. What message? That I'm vulnerable. His jaw was tight. That caring about someone makes me weak. Are they right? He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the truth in his face before he spoke it. Yes. Marcus burst through another door, covered in concrete dust. West Wing is secure. We've got 8 confirmed enemy casualties, 3 of ours wounded, but they're retreating. How many got away? At least 4, maybe more. Lucian studied the monitors, his expression unreadable. Then he did something that made Lyra's blood run cold. He smiled. Good, he said quietly. Marcus stared at him. Good? They just breached your home. They came for her. They failed. And now I know exactly what they're capable of. He turned to Lyra. And they know what I'm willing to do to protect you. This is insane. She stepped forward, anger overriding fear. People are dead. Your people. Because of me. Because of them. His voice cut like glass. They chose to attack my home. They chose to threaten what's mine. This is on them. I'm not yours. Yes, you are. He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands framing her face. You've been mine since the cafe, since the rain, since the moment I decided you were worth burning the world for. Then stop burning it. Her voice cracked. Let me go. Tell them they were right, that I don't matter, that... No. Lucien, I said no. His thumbs brushed away tears she didn't realize she'd shed. You're not leaving. Not now. Not ever. Not while I'm still breathing. Then you're going to get us both killed. Probably. He kissed her, hard and possessive and desperate. But we'll die together. Marcus cleared his throat. We have a bigger problem. Lucien didn't release her. What? During the attack, they grabbed someone. One of the kitchen staff. Young kid, worked here 3 months. And before we could stop them, they got him off the property. Marcus pulled up a photo on his phone. A scared-looking boy, maybe 19. They left a message. They want to meet. Tomorrow night. Neutral ground. You and the girl or the kid dies. Silence fell like a hammer. Lyra felt Lucien's arms tighten around her, felt the rage vibrating through his body, felt the terrible choice settling into the space between them. It's a trap, Marcus said flatly. Obviously. They'll kill you both. Probably. So we don't go. We write off the kid. Find another way. No. Lyra pulled back, looking at Lucien. We can't let him die because of me. He knew the risks working here. He's 19, and you're mine. His eyes were winter cold. I'm not trading you for anyone. Then you're the monster everyone says you are. The words hit like bullets. She watched something crack in his expression, watched him calculate costs and consequences, watched him choose between the man he was and the man he wanted to be. Finally, he spoke. Set up the meeting tomorrow night, but we do it my way. Lucien, Marcus started. My way. He released Lyra, moved to the monitors. They want a trap? I'll give them a fucking masterpiece. He started issuing orders, and the room exploded into activity. But Lyra stood frozen, understanding with perfect clarity what had just happened. She'd pushed him toward humanity, and humanity was going to get them killed. The sun rose over the estate, lighting up damage that looked like a war zone. Bullet holes. Burn marks. Blood being hosed off stone paths. Lyra watched from the window of Lucien's office while he made calls in 3 different languages, coordinating response and revenge in equal measure. When he finally stopped, the silence was deafening. You should eat something, he said without looking at her. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway, you'll need your strength. For what? The ambush? For surviving it. He turned to face her, and she saw exhaustion carved into every line of his face. I won't let them take you. You can't promise that. Watch me. She crossed to where he stood, reached up, touched the bruise forming on his jaw. What if Marcus is right? What if this is all a mistake? Then it's my mistake to make. No. Her hand dropped. It's mine too now. His eyes searched her face. You're staying. Not a question, an understanding. I'm staying, she confirmed, but not because I'm trapped. Not because I don't have a choice. She took a breath. Because I choose this. I choose you. Whatever that makes me. Mine, he said simply. Yours, she agreed. And when he kissed her this time, it felt less like possession and more like a promise. That they'd walk into fire together. That they'd burn or survive as one. That there was no going back from this moment. Outside, the Empire waited. Inside, 2 broken people found something neither believed existed. Someone worth dying for. And that terrified them more than any bullet ever could. 22 hours until the meeting, and Lucien was building a war. Lyra watched from the corner of the command center as he transformed the chaos of the previous night into cold strategy. Maps spread across tables, photographs of the proposed meeting site, an abandoned warehouse complex near the shipping yards, personnel files of every person who'd be in position, weapons inventory, escape routes, contingency plans stacked on contingency plans. Marcus stood opposite him, arms crossed, radiating disapproval. This is suicide dressed up as tactics. This is insurance. Lucien marked another position on the map. 12 shooters on the perimeter. 3 inside posing as neutral party security. 4 more in the building across the street. They want me exposed? I'll give them theater. And when they bring 50 men instead of 12? Then we adapt. With her standing in the middle of the kill zone, Marcus jabbed a finger toward Lyra. She's not trained, not prepared. One bullet goes wide, and One bullet goes wide, and I end the Volkov family line permanently. Lucian's voice was ice. They know this. It's why they'll be careful. You're betting her life on them being careful. I'm betting her life on them being smart enough to know what happens if they're not. Lyra pushed off the wall. Stop talking about me like I'm not here. Both men turned. Marcus looked at her with something like pity. Lucienne looked at her like she was the only solid thing in a liquid world. You should rest, Lucian said. I should know what I'm walking into. A trap. I got that part. She moved to the table, studied the maps that meant nothing to her. What happens if they don't play by your rules? They will. But if they don't? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, you run. Irina will be positioned at the northwest exit. She'll get you out. And you? I'll buy you time. The words were so calm, so matter-of-fact, that it took her brain a second to process what he was actually saying. You mean you'll die? If necessary. No. The word came out sharp. No, that's not the plan. That's always been the plan. He looked at her with those winter gray eyes. From the moment I sat down across from you in that cafe, I knew it might come to this. I chose it anyway. Romantic, Marcus muttered. Get yourself killed for a woman you've known 2 weeks. 11 days, Lucian corrected. But yes. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. I'm not worth dying for. That's not your decision to make. The fuck it's not. You don't get to sacrifice yourself and call it love. I'm not calling it love. He rounded the table, closing the distance between them. I'm calling it the only thing that's mattered to me in 11 years. I'm calling it the reason I get up in the morning. I'm calling it the difference between existing and living. That's obsession. Yes. No denial, no shame. And I'd rather die obsessed than live empty. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to shake him until he understood that martyrdom wasn't romance. It was just another kind of control. Instead, she turned to Marcus. Talk him out of this. Marcus laughed, bitter and tired. You think I haven't tried? I've been trying to talk sense into him since he was 15. He doesn't listen to reason. He listens to instinct. And his instinct says you're worth burning for. Then his instinct is going to get him killed. Probably. Marcus picked up his jacket. I'll finalize positions. We move out at 2100 tomorrow. He left, and suddenly the room felt too small. Too quiet. Too full of things neither of them knew how to say. Lucienne broke first. You're angry. I'm terrified. Of dying? Of you dying. She pressed her palms against the table, needing something solid. Of watching it happen and knowing it's because of me. It's because of them. Don't. She spun to face him. Don't pretend this is just business. You could hand me over. Could tell them it was a mistake, that I mean nothing, that you mean everything. He crossed to her, hands settling on her shoulders. And if I give you up, I become something worse than dead. I become the man my father was, weak, compromising, letting fear make decisions instead of will. Your father kept you alive. My father got my mother killed. His grip tightened. By being predictable. By negotiating when he should have attacked. By trying to be reasonable with people who only understand violence. So you'll die unreasonable? I'll die free. He pulled her closer, close enough that she felt his breath against her forehead. And you'll live. That's all that matters. She wanted to argue. Wanted to make him see that living without him wasn't living at all anymore. That somewhere in the past 11 days she'd stopped being able to imagine a future where he didn't exist in it. But the words stuck in her throat, sharp and useless. Instead, she kissed him, desperate and furious and terrified, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her mouth against his. He responded immediately, arms locking around her waist, lifting her onto the table, scattering maps and photographs. His hands were in her hair, her legs wrapped around his hips, and for a few minutes the world narrowed to just this. Skin and heat, and the taste of cigarettes and coffee, and something that felt almost like hope. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lyra pressed her forehead against his. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll try to survive. I promise I'll do everything in my power to come back to you. That's not the same thing. It's all I've got. She laughed, sharp and broken. We're so fucked. Completely. He kissed her again, softer this time. But we're fucked together. Romantic. I try. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other among the war plans, and Lyra tried to memorize every detail. The way his heartbeat felt against her chest, the calluses on his fingers, the small scar above his left eyebrow, all the tiny pieces of him she might never get to touch again. When they finally pulled apart, reality crashed back in. Tomorrow night, they'd walk into fire, and only one of them might walk out. The day passed in slow motion and too fast at the same time. Lyra spent the morning with Irina, learning basic exit strategies and how to move in a tactical situation. The afternoon disappeared into nervous energy, pacing, showering, trying to eat food that tasted like cardboard. At 7 p.m., Irina appeared with clothes: black jeans, dark jacket, boots made for running, tactical gear disguised as civilian clothing. "Put these on," Irina said. "We leave in 90 minutes. Lyra changed with shaking hands. When she emerged, Irina was checking weapons with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. "You scared?" Lyra asked. Terrified. Irina slid a magazine into place. "But I'm good at my job, and my job tonight is keeping you alive." "Why? You barely know me." "Because Lucien needs you." She looked up, and her eyes were softer than Lyra had ever seen them. "In 5 years, I've watched him turn into something barely human. Just walking violence and control. Then you happened, and for the first time he looked like a person again. That's a lot of pressure. You chose it when you stayed." "I know." Irina holstered her weapon. "If things go bad tonight, and they probably will, you do exactly what I say. No hesitation, no arguments. Your only job is to run when I tell you to run." "What about Lucien?" "Lucien's job is to make sure you have the chance to run." She moved to the door. "Come on. Time to go." The convoy assembled in the underground garage. 3 black SUVs, each armored and bulletproof. 12 guards total, all armed, all moving with military precision. The air tasted like gun oil and adrenaline. Lucien stood beside the lead vehicle, dressed in black, looking like death personified. When he saw Lyra, something flickered in his expression. Fear, maybe, or the closest thing to it she'd seen from him. "Ready?" he asked. "No." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He opened the door. "Stay close to me. If shooting starts, you get behind me and stay there." They drove through the city in tense silence. Lyra sat pressed against Lucien's side, feeling the weapon holstered at his hip, the tension vibrating through his body. Through tinted windows, she watched Chicago pass by. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that somewhere in the darkness, people were about to die. The warehouse district appeared like a wound in the urban landscape. Abandoned buildings, broken windows, streets lit by stuttering fluorescents. The convoy rolled to a stop 3 blocks from the meeting site. Marcus appeared at the window. "Perimeter teams are in position. No sign of unusual activity." "Which means they're already here." Lucien checked his phone. "We're 10 minutes early. Let them sweat." Those 10 minutes felt like hours. Lyra watched guards take positions, checking sight lines, coordinating through earpieces. The orchestrated violence of it was almost beautiful in its precision. Finally, Lucien turned to her. "Last chance. You can stay in the vehicle. Irina will keep it running." "We do this together." "We do this together," he agreed. They walked into the warehouse like they were walking into their own execution. The interior was exactly what Lyra expected from 1,000 crime movies. Concrete floors, rusted machinery, shadows that could hide a dozen shooters. Sodium lights hung from the ceiling, casting everything in sickly yellow. At the center of the space, a single table with 4 chairs. 3 men waited there. The one in the middle was older, 60 maybe, with silver hair and a face that had seen too much violence to flinch at more. He wore an expensive suit that couldn't hide the killer underneath. "Devereaux," he said in heavily accented English. "You came." "Volkov." Lucien's voice was flat. "I'm here for the boy." "Yes, the boy." Volkov smiled, and it was the smile of a shark. "He's alive. For now. But first, we talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "I disagree." Volkov's eyes slid to Lyra. "This is her? The girl worth starting a war over?" "Careful." The word was a knife. "Just curious." Volkov leaned back in his chair. "She must be something special, to make the great Lucien Devereaux so sloppy. Lyra felt Lucien tense beside her, felt the violence coiling in him like a spring. Marcus appeared at their left, 3 guards at their right. The positioning was perfect. Textbook. Too perfect. "Where's the boy?" Lucien demanded. "Safe." Volkov gestured to the empty chairs. "Sit. Let's be civilized." They sat. Lyra between Lucien and Marcus, feeling like bait at the center of a trap. The air was thick with tension, every man in the room calculating angles and odds. "You've been disrupting my business for 18 months, Volkov said conversationally. "Blocking shipments, turning my contacts, making me look weak to my partners." "You are weak." "Perhaps," Volkov smiled again. "But I'm also patient, and I've learned something about you, Devereaux. Something important." "What's that?" "You have rules, lines you won't cross, makes you predictable." "I'm predictable?" Lucien laughed, cold and sharp. "You're the one who walked into a meet thinking I'd negotiate." "Oh, we're not here to negotiate." Volkov pulled out his phone, set it on the table. "We're here to teach you a lesson about consequences." He tapped the screen. The video feed showed the kitchen boy, bound to a chair in some anonymous room. He was crying, begging into the camera. Then a masked figure stepped into frame and shot him in the head. The image went black. Lyra's stomach turned to ice. She heard Marcus curse, felt Lucien go absolutely still beside her with the kind of stillness that preceded explosive violence. "He's been dead for 6 hours, Volkov said calmly. "This meeting was never about exchange. It was about getting you here, exposed, distracted." "You made a mistake," Lucien said quietly. "Did I?" Volkov stood. "I don't think so. You see, while you've been so focused on your little girlfriend, I've been making new friends. Important friends. The kind who have access to things you don't." "What things?" "Information." Volkov's smile widened. "About a man named Marcus Chen, your right hand, your most trusted advisor, the man who stood by you for 11 years. Lucien's head turned fractionally toward Marcus. "What's he talking about?" Marcus's face was stone. "I have no idea." "Don't you?" Volkov pulled out another phone. "Let me refresh your memory. 18 months ago, you contacted me, offered to provide intelligence on Devereaux's operations, in exchange for immunity when my organization took over his territory." "Bullshit," Marcus snarled. "Is it?" Volkov tapped the phone. "Shall we listen to the recordings?" Audio filled the warehouse. A voice that sounded exactly like Marcus, discussing shipment routes, security protocols, weaknesses in Lucien's network. Meeting after meeting, month after month. 18 months of betrayal played out in crystal clear fidelity. Lyra felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Lucien stood slowly, turned to face Marcus, and the look in his eyes was something beyond rage, beyond fury. It was the look of a man watching his entire world crack apart. "Tell me it's fake," Lucien said softly. Marcus stood too, hands open, placating. "Lucien, listen to me. Tell me it's fake. I can explain." The punch came faster than Lyra could track. Lucien's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending him sprawling. Guards rushed in, but Lucien waved them back, standing over Marcus with murder in his eyes. "How long?" Lucien's voice shook. "How long have you been selling me out?" Marcus touched his bleeding mouth. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me." Lucien grabbed him by the collar, hauled him upright. "Explain how my most trusted advisor has been feeding information to my enemies for 18 months. "Because you were going to get everyone killed," Marcus shouted back. "Your obsession with this girl, your refusal to compromise, your father's mistakes all over again. Someone had to think about the people who depend on you." "So you went to the Volkovs?" "I went to the only people with the power to stop you from self-destructing." Marcus grabbed Lucien's wrists. "I was trying to save you. By betraying me. By building a bridge for when you inevitably burned yours." Lucien released him like he was contaminated, stepped back, and Lyra watched something die in his face. The last piece of humanity that had survived the violence and blood and 11 years of control. "You're going to kill me now," Marcus said quietly. I know that. But before you do, know that I did it because I loved you, because I watched you turn into your father, and I couldn't let you make his mistakes. My father was weak. Your father was human. Marcus straightened, ready to die. And so were you, until tonight. The gun appeared in Lucien's hand like magic. 1 second, nothing. The next, a weapon leveled at Marcus's head. The warehouse went silent. Even the Volkovs watched, fascinated by the theater of betrayal. Lyra saw Lucien's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the absolute certainty in Marcus's face that he was about to die, saw the moment Lucien chose between justice and mercy. The gunshot was deafening, but it wasn't aimed at Marcus. Lucien spun and fired 3 shots at Volkov, who dropped behind the table. His guards returned fire immediately. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Concrete dust filled the air. Bodies dropped. Someone grabbed Lyra, Irina, appearing from nowhere, dragging her toward the exit. She fought, screaming Lucien's name, but Irina was stronger and trained and not about to let her die for sentiment. "Move!" Irina shouted. They ran through smoke and gunfire. Behind them, Lyra heard Lucien barking orders, coordinating response even in the middle of hell. Heard Marcus's voice, too, calling out positions, still trying to keep him alive even after everything. They were 10 feet from the exit when it exploded inward. The blast threw Lyra backward. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. Through the smoke, she saw figures in tactical gear pouring through the breach. Not Volkov's men. Someone else. Reinforcements. Irina tried to drag her up, but blood poured from a gash on her forehead. "Run!" she gasped. "Lyra, run!" But Lyra couldn't run, couldn't move, could only watch as the warehouse became a slaughterhouse. Lucien's men fighting on 2 fronts, bodies falling, blood pooling on concrete, and then hands grabbed her from behind. Professional. Efficient. Zip tie around her wrists before she could scream, bag over her head before she could see their faces. The last thing she heard before darkness took her was Lucien's voice, raw and desperate, screaming her name. Then nothing. She woke in motion. Vehicle interior, cloth bag still over her head. Her hands were bound behind her, shoulders screaming from the position. She tried to speak, but duct tape covered her mouth. Panic hit like a wave. She thrashed, trying to break free, and someone's hand pressed down on her shoulder. "Stop." Male voice, American accent. "You'll hurt yourself." She kept fighting until exhaustion won. Then she lay still, trying to control her breathing, trying not to hyperventilate inside the bag. How long they drove, she couldn't tell. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours. Time became meaningless in the darkness. Eventually, the vehicle stopped. Doors opened, hands grabbed her, pulled her out into cold air that smelled like water and rust. They walked her across uneven ground, gravel, maybe, or broken asphalt. Then inside, through what sounded like a large space based on the echo of footsteps. They sat her in a chair, cut the zip ties, removed the bag and tape. Lyra blinked against fluorescent lights, vision adjusting slowly. She was in another warehouse, different from the meeting site, but equally abandoned. Water damage on the walls, broken windows showing night sky. And standing in front of her, very much alive, was Volkov. "Welcome," he said pleasantly. "I apologize for the dramatics, but you understand we couldn't risk Devereaux following immediately." "Where am I?" Her voice was raw. "Safe." He pulled up a chair, sat down across from her. "For now. Whether you stay safe depends entirely on you. If you're going to kill me, just do it." "Kill you?" He laughed. "My dear, you're far too valuable to kill. You're the key to everything." "I'm nobody." "You're the woman Lucien Devereaux burned his empire for." Volkov leaned forward. "Do you know what that makes you? It makes you leverage. It makes you the one thing he can't think rationally about. It makes you my checkmate." Lyra's mind raced, trying to find angles, trying to think like Lucien would. "He won't negotiate. He will for you. You don't know him. I know him better than you think." Volkov pulled out his phone again, showed her surveillance photos. Lucien leaving the warehouse, covered in blood. Marcus beside him, equally bloodied, both alive. "Your boy survived. So did his traitor. They're quite the pair, working together even after betrayal." "What do you want?" "Simple. Lucian signs over 40% of his operations to my organization. His shipping routes, his political contacts, his weapons suppliers. In return, you live. He'll never do it. Then you die. Volkov said it so casually, like discussing weather. And we start taking apart his empire piece by piece until nothing remains but a man who loved a woman too much to keep her safe. You're insane. I'm pragmatic. He stood, moved toward the door. You have until tomorrow morning. I suggest you pray he values your life more than his pride. I don't pray, Lyra said. Then hope. Volkov smiled. It's all you have left. He left, and 2 guards took position at the door. Lyra was alone in the chair, hands free, but trapped all the same, with nothing but silence and fear and the terrible understanding settling in her gut. Lucien would give them everything for her, would burn his empire to ash to buy her life, would become exactly what Marcus had feared, a man destroyed by love. Unless she did something he'd never expect, unless she saved herself. The thought was terrifying and liberating in equal measure, because for 11 days she'd been a prize worth fighting for, a treasure worth protecting, a woman valuable enough to start wars over. But she'd never been helpless. She'd survived 24 years on Chicago's South Side with nothing. She'd worked dead-end jobs and paid bills and kept herself alive through sheer stubborn will, and she sure as hell wasn't going to die because some crime lord decided she was leverage. Lyra looked at the guards, at the warehouse, at the broken windows showing night sky, and she started planning her own escape. Because loving a monster didn't mean becoming helpless. It meant learning to be monstrous too. The guards changed shifts every 4 hours. Lyra counted it in the rhythm of footsteps, in the pattern of voices exchanging brief words in Russian before one pair left and another arrived. She sat in that chair for what felt like days but was probably only 12 hours, watching shadows move across walls, memorizing every detail of her prison. The warehouse was old. Water damage meant structural weakness. The windows on the east side were broken, just jagged glass teeth pointing at the sky, 15 feet up, maybe less. The guards stood at the only door, but they were bored, complacent. They'd searched her once when she arrived, found nothing because she had nothing, and now they treated her like furniture. That was their first mistake. Around what she guessed was 3 in the morning, one of the guards left to piss. The other pulled out his phone, scrolling through something that lit his face in cold blue light. His weapon hung loose at his side. Lyra stood slowly, testing his attention. He glanced up, assessed her, decided she wasn't a threat, went back to his phone. She moved toward the corner where debris had piled up over years of abandonment. Broken pallets, rusted metal, and there, half buried in concrete dust, a piece of rebar about 18 inches long, heavy enough to do damage. Her hand closed around it. The guard's head came up. Sit down. Lyra turned, holding the rebar behind her back. I need to use the bathroom. Hold it. I can't. He sighed, irritated, and stood. Walked toward her with the casual confidence of a man who'd underestimated women his entire life. That was his second mistake. When he got close enough, Lyra swung. The rebar caught him across the temple with a sound like a baseball bat hitting meat. He dropped. Not dead, but not getting up anytime soon. Blood pooled beneath his head. Lyra stood over him, breathing hard, the rebar slick in her hands. Every nerve in her body was screaming. Every instinct said to run. But the other guard would be back any second. She pressed herself against the wall beside the door. Waited. Footsteps approached. The door opened. The second guard stepped through, already speaking in Russian, probably asking his partner what he wanted for breakfast, or how much longer their shift was. He never finished the question. Lyra brought the rebar down on the back of his skull. He crumpled like his bones had turned to water. His weapon clattered across concrete. She grabbed it, some kind of automatic pistol, cold and heavier than she expected. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She'd never held a gun before. Didn't know how to check if it was loaded, how to turn off a safety, how to do anything except point and pull. But Lucian's men had carried weapons just like this, and muscle memory from watching them was going to have to be enough. The warehouse had multiple exits. She chose the one farthest from the main entrance, a loading dock with a roll-up door that was partially open. Outside, the air tasted like water and industrial chemicals. Lake Michigan was close, She could hear waves against pilings. The shipping district, south side, maybe 3 miles from Lucian's territory. Lyra ran, not gracefully, not tactically, just pure animal panic, feet pounding against broken asphalt, lungs burning, the stolen gun clutched against her chest. Behind her, she heard shouting. Someone had found the guards. She cut between buildings, through alleys that stank of piss and rot. Her boots splashed through puddles she didn't see. Twice she slipped, went down hard on her knees, scrambled up and kept running. A vehicle roared to life behind her. Headlights swept the alley. She dove behind a dumpster as the SUV roared past, then ran the opposite direction. Her sense of direction was gone. She was just moving, just trying to put distance between herself and them, just trying to survive until what? She didn't have a phone, didn't know where she was, didn't know how to contact Lucian or if he was even still alive. But she knew Chicago, knew the South Side, knew that if she could get to a main street, find people, find witnesses, the Volkovs couldn't just grab her in public. Probably. Maybe. She hoped. The alley opened onto a wider street. Streetlights. A 24-hour gas station on the corner with a clerk visible through bulletproof glass. Lyra stumbled toward it like a drowning woman toward shore. She was 10 feet from the door when the SUV cut her off. It happened so fast her brain couldn't process it. 1 second running, the next staring at black paint and tinted windows. Doors opened. Men got out. Lyra raised the gun. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely keep it level. The men stopped, hands going to their own weapons. For a moment, everyone froze in that horrible tableau, her pointing a gun she didn't know how to use at trained killers who definitely did. Easy, one of them said, American accent. Not Volkov's men. Lyra Vale, we're here to help. Bullshit. Lucien sent us. Prove it. The man slowly reached into his jacket. Lyra's finger tightened on the trigger. He pulled out a phone, held it up so she could see the screen. A video call. Lucien's face filled the display. He looked like he'd been through a war, blood on his face, exhaustion carved into every line. But his eyes were alert, burning with that intensity she'd come to recognize. Lyra, his voice cracked. Baby, it's okay. They're mine. Lower the gun. How do I know this is real? Because I'm asking you to trust me. He leaned closer to the camera. And because if they wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. The truth of it hit her. These men had been following her for blocks, could have taken her down any time. Instead, they'd waited until she was cornered and scared and ready to shoot. Lyra lowered the gun. Her legs gave out. She hit the concrete hard, the weapon clattering away, and suddenly there were hands on her, gentle, careful, lifting her. Someone wrapped a jacket around her shoulders. Someone else was speaking into a radio, rapid-fire coordinates and medical assessments. The man with the phone crouched beside her. We've got you. You're safe now. Lucien is 3 minutes away. He's been tearing the city apart looking for you. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. They got her into the SUV, one man driving, while another monitored her vitals like she was made of glass. She couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop replaying the moment she'd brought that rebar down on a man's skull, the sound it made, the way his eyes went empty. Did I kill them? She asked. The man beside her glanced back at the warehouse district, now 6 blocks behind them. The guards? Probably not. But you bought yourself time. That's what matters. I've never heard anyone before. You did what you had to do. His voice was a matter of fact. Welcome to the life. The SUV pulled into a parking garage, underground, private, filled with more black vehicles and armed men. And there, standing in the middle of it all, like the eye of a hurricane, was Lucien. The vehicle wasn't fully stopped before he wrenched the door open. Lyra fell into his arms and broke apart. All the fear and adrenaline and terror came pouring out in sobs she couldn't control. She clutched at his shirt, his jacket, anything solid, while he held her so tightly she could barely breathe. His face pressed into her hair. His hands ran over her back, her arms, checking for injuries with desperate efficiency. I've got you, he murmured against her temple. I've got you. You're safe. You're safe. They took me. I know. The boy was already dead. I know. Marcus betrayed you. I know. His voice was raw. But you're here. You're alive. That's all that matters. She pulled back enough to see his face. Up close, the damage was worse. Split lip, bruising around his left eye, cuts that would scar. Are you okay? Am I? He laughed, broken and bitter. Lyra, I thought they'd killed you. I thought I'd lost you before I ever really had you. Nothing else matters. Where's Marcus? Alive. For now. Something dark crossed his expression. We have things to discuss, but first you need medical attention. I'm fine. You're bleeding. She looked down. Her hands were torn up from the falls, elbows scraped raw through her jacket. She hadn't even noticed. It's nothing. It's not nothing. He lifted her out of the vehicle, carrying her like she weighed nothing, and for once she didn't fight it. Just let herself be held while the world spun and her brain tried to catch up with everything that had happened. They brought her to what looked like a safe house, nondescript building, reinforced doors, medical supplies laid out in a makeshift clinic. A woman in scrubs cleaned and bandaged her hands while Lucian stood 3 feet away, unable to look anywhere else. You need to rest, the woman said when she finished. Your body's in shock. I need to see Marcus. Everyone in the room went still. Lucian moved closer. That's not a good idea. I need to understand. She stood, testing her legs, finding them mostly steady. I need to hear it from him. Lyra, you brought me into this. Her voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. You made me part of this world, so now I'm choosing to be part of it. Take me to Marcus. For a moment she thought he'd refuse, thought he'd pull rank, assert control, lock her away for her own safety. Instead, he nodded once, sharp and final. This way. They walked through hallways that felt more like a bunker than a building. Armed guards at every checkpoint, reinforced walls. The kind of place you went when the entire world was hunting you. Marcus was in what looked like an interrogation room. Sitting at a metal table, hands cuffed in front of him, a guard at each corner. He looked up when they entered, and Lyra saw something break in his expression. You're alive, he said quietly. No thanks to you. Lucian's voice was ice. I didn't tell them to take her. That wasn't part of any agreement. But you told them enough to make it possible. Marcus's jaw tightened. I told them enough to keep this organization from collapsing. Someone had to think strategically. Strategic? Lucian slammed his hands on the table. You call betraying me strategic? I call watching you obsess over a woman while your empire burns strategic intervention. The words echoed in the small room. Lyra felt them land like bullets, each one meant to wound, but she stepped forward anyway, placed a hand on Lucian's arm. Let me talk to him. Lyra, please. Lucian's jaw worked. Then he nodded curtly and stepped back, giving her space. Lyra sat down across from Marcus. Up close, she could see he'd been through the same war as Lucian, bloodied, exhausted, worn down to something barely holding together. Why? She asked simply. Marcus met her eyes. Because I watched his father make the same mistakes. Loved someone so much he couldn't think straight, made compromises, showed weakness, and it got him and his wife killed. I couldn't let Lucian follow that path. So you betrayed him to save him? I gave the Volkovs what they wanted, information, in exchange for a negotiated transition of power. I thought if I could prove to Lucian that obsession leads to ruin, he'd see reason. But you were wrong. Was I? Marcus glanced at Lucian. You walked into an obvious trap tonight, nearly got everyone killed, all because you couldn't let her go. And I'd do it again, Lucian said flatly. I know, that's why I can't let you lead anymore. Marcus's voice was tired. Someone has to make the hard choices. Lyra felt something click into place. The Volkovs weren't supposed to take me. They were supposed to kill Lucian. Silence. Marcus didn't deny it. You set up the meeting knowing it was a trap, she continued, voice steady despite the horror crawling through her. You told them everything they'd need to overwhelm his security. You wanted him dead so you could take over the organization and salvage what was left. I wanted to save what he was throwing away. Marcus's composure cracked. 11 years I've stood by him, 11 years watching him turn into a machine. And then you show up, and suddenly he's human again, making stupid decisions, risking everything for someone he barely knows. So yes, I made a choice. I chose the Empire over the man. You chose wrong, Lucien said quietly. Did I? You're still alive. The organization still stands, and now maybe you'll understand that some things matter more than feelings. You're right. Lucien moved forward, pulled out his weapon, pressed it to Marcus's temple. Some things do matter more than feelings. Marcus closed his eyes, ready to die. Do it. Lyra watched Lucian's finger tighten on the trigger. Watched the war happening behind his eyes. Justice versus mercy, logic versus history. Everything Marcus had been to him against everything Marcus had tried to destroy. Don't, she said softly. Lucien didn't move, didn't lower the gun. He tried to have me killed. I know. He would have gotten you killed. I know that too. She stood, moved beside him, placed her hand over his on the weapon. But if you kill him now, he wins. He proves his point, that you're a machine, that feelings make you weak, that this world takes everything human away. Maybe he's right. He's not. She pulled his hand down, gun pointing at the floor. You're angry. You're hurt. You're betrayed. Those are human responses. The machine response would be to pull the trigger without hesitation. Lucien looked at her like she'd just spoken a language he'd forgotten. What are you saying? I'm saying prove him wrong. Show him that love doesn't make you weak. She turned to Marcus. Show him that mercy is the hardest choice a man with power can make. Marcus opened his eyes, staring at her like she was insane. Maybe she was. Maybe 3 weeks ago, the woman who stocked shelves and ate ramen and dreamed of nothing would have demanded his death. But that woman had been burned away in the fire of the past 11 days, replaced by someone who understood the weight of violence and the cost of survival. He'll come for me again, Lucien said. Then keep him alive and make him watch you build something better than what he tried to protect. She squeezed his hand. Let him see that he was wrong about you, about us, about everything. The silence stretched so long Lyra thought she'd miscalculated, thought Lucien would pull the trigger anyway, and she'd learned the hard lesson that some men couldn't be saved from themselves. Then he holstered the weapon. Get him out of my sight, he told the guards. Secure location, supervised. If he tries to contact anyone outside this organization, you have permission to end him. They pulled Marcus up, led him toward the door. He paused, looking back at Lucien. You're making a mistake. Probably. Lucien's arm wrapped around Lyra's waist, pulling her close. But it's my mistake to make. When they were alone, Lucien turned to her. You saved his life. I saved yours. She touched his face, fingers tracing the bruises. Killing him would have haunted you. I know you, Lucien. You're not a monster. You just play one to survive. And what does that make you, saving the man who tried to destroy us? Smart enough to know that revenge is easy. Living with the consequences of mercy is the hard part. She kissed him, tasting blood and exhaustion, and something like hope. And we're going to live with this. Together. He held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She smiled against his mouth. But you're stuck with me anyway. The Volkovs still have to answer for taking you. I know. I'm going to burn their organization to the ground. I know that too. And you're okay with that? With what I'm about to do? Lyra pulled back, met his eyes. I killed 2 men tonight, or hurt them badly enough they wished they were dead. I beat them with a piece of rebar because they were standing between me and freedom. So don't ask me if I'm okay with violence. Ask me if I'm ready to be your partner in it. Are you? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. But we do it smart. We do it clean. And we make sure no more innocent people die because of us. That's a tall order in my world. Then maybe we need to change your world. Something shifted in his expression. Wonder mixed with fear, mixed with possibility. You're serious. I grew up with nothing, built survival out of scraps. You think I can't help you rebuild this empire into something that doesn't require body count to maintain? She laced her fingers through his. I'm not asking you to go legitimate, but I am asking you to be smart about the violence. Strategic. Use it only when necessary. You sound like Marcus. I sound like someone who loves you enough to keep you alive despite your worst instincts. She kissed him again. Now tell me the plan. How do we end this with the Volkovs? Lucian's smile was sharp enough to cut. You're not going to like it. Try me. The plan was insane. Lyra said so 3 times while Lucian laid it out in the conference room, maps and photos and tactical assessments spread across every surface. A dozen of his most trusted people, minus Marcus, surrounded the table, all of them looking at her like she'd grown a second head when she kept interrupting with questions. Let me get this straight, she said. You want to hit 3 Volkov locations simultaneously, draw them out of their main compound, and then you want me to walk into that compound and deliver an ultimatum. It's more nuanced than that. It's a suicide mission dressed up as strategy. It's psychology. Lucian pointed to surveillance photos of the compound, a converted industrial building on the north side, surrounded by fences and cameras and armed guards. Volkov thinks you're leverage. He thinks I'll do anything to keep you safe. But if you walk in voluntarily, alone, it shifts the power dynamic. It shifts me from hostage to corpse. Not if we do it right. He pulled up building schematics. You go in the front door, public approach. Cameras recording everything. If he kills you immediately, he loses his leverage and proves he can't be negotiated with. His organization won't accept that kind of sloppiness. And if he doesn't kill me immediately, then you deliver the message. Lucien's eyes were cold. Tell him that I'm giving him one chance to walk away. That he can take his people and leave Chicago. That if he refuses, I'll systematically dismantle everything he's built until there's nothing left but blood and ruins. He'll never accept that. I know, but it's not about him accepting. It's about his people hearing it. Hearing that their boss kidnapped a civilian, that he's willing to die rather than compromise, that they're all going to burn because of his ego. Lucian's finger traced the building's exits. We'll have people positioned at every escape route. When his organization fractures, and it will, we'll be there to offer them a better deal. Irina spoke up from the end of the table. It's risky. If even one of his men decides shooting her sends the right message. They won't. Lucian's certainty was absolute. Because I'll be there, inside, waiting. The room went silent. You're insane, Lyra said. If they catch you inside, they won't. Their security is focused on external threats. They're not looking for someone already in the building. He pulled up thermal scans and guard rotations. I'll enter through the maintenance tunnels 2 hours before you arrive. Position myself in the ventilation shaft overlooking Volkov's office. And when you're done talking, when he makes his choice, he looked at her with those winter gray eyes. I'll make sure you walk out alive. By killing him, if necessary. When has it ever not been necessary in your world? When the other option is losing you. He moved around the table, took her hands in his. I know it's risky. I know you're scared. But this is how we end it. We show strength, offer mercy, and make it clear that the cost of refusing is total annihilation. Lyra looked around the room, at Irina, who nodded slightly, at the other guards and coordinators and killers who'd chosen to follow Lucian into hell, at the maps and plans and cold calculations that added up to maybe 20% survival odds if everything went perfectly. When? She asked. Tonight, before they regroup, before they have time to fortify or relocate, or… Tonight. She squeezed his hands. Okay, tonight we end this. Lucian pulled her close, kissed her forehead. I won't let anything happen to you. You can't promise that. Watch me. They prepared like soldiers before battle. Lyra was fitted with body armor under her clothes, lightweight Kevlar that might stop a bullet or might just slow it down enough to kill her slower. They gave her an earpiece so she could hear Lucian's voice from inside the ventilation system. They walked her through exactly what to say, how to stand, where to position herself to give him the clearest shot. It felt like learning choreography for her own execution. Remember, Lucian said while checking his weapons, Volkov is old school. He respects courage. Walk in like you own the building. Don't show fear. I'm terrified. Use it. Terror makes you sharp. He holstered his weapon, moved to face her. I'll be in your ear the whole time. If things go bad, I'll get you out. And if things go bad for you? They won't. They won't. He cupped her face. Because I have something to live for now. And that makes me more dangerous than I've ever been. They left in separate vehicles. Lucien's team would hit the auxiliary locations at exactly 9 p.m. He'd enter the tunnels at 9:30. Lyra would arrive at the front gate at 10. Precision timing, everything dependent on everyone hitting their marks exactly. The drive to the north side felt like crossing into enemy territory, which Lyra supposed it was. Irina drove, silent and focused, while Lyra sat in the back trying to control her breathing. "You don't have to do this," Irina said quietly. "Yes, I do." "He'd understand if you backed out." "Would he?" Lyra met her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Or would he just do something stupid to save me and get himself killed?" Irina smiled slightly. "You know him well." "I'm learning." At 9:45, they parked 3 blocks from the compound. Lyra got out, straightened her jacket over the body armor, and started walking. Each step felt like walking toward a cliff edge. Her earpiece crackled. "I'm in position." Lucien's voice slightly distorted. "Can you hear me?" "Yeah." "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to throw up." "That's normal. Keep walking. You're doing great." The compound loomed ahead. Chain link fence, security checkpoint, floodlights turning night into day. She approached the gate and immediately 4 guards surrounded her, weapons drawn. "I'm here to see Volkov," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "How did you get this address?" "Does it matter? I'm here. Either let me in or shoot me. But he's going to want to hear what I have to say." They searched her. Found the body armor but no weapons. Talked into radios in Russian. Finally, the gate opened. "This way." They walked her through the compound, and Lyra felt every camera tracking her movement. Felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing whether she was a threat or just crazy. The building's interior was exactly what the schematics had shown: industrial, converted, more warehouse than office. They took her to a large room on the 3rd floor. Volkov sat behind a desk, flanked by 2 guards, looking annoyed and intrigued in equal measure. "Miss Vale," he said, "this is unexpected." "I'm here to deliver a message," her voice echoed in the large space. "I'm listening." "Lucien Devereaux is giving you one chance to walk away." The words came out exactly as practiced. "Take your people. Leave Chicago. Disappear. If you do, he'll let you live." Volkov laughed. "And if I refuse, then he'll systematically destroy everything you've built. Your operations, your people, your legacy. All of it will burn." Bold words from a hostage. "I'm not a hostage." She spread her arms. "I walked in here voluntarily. I can walk out the same way. The question is whether you're smart enough to let me. Or maybe..." Volkov stood, moved around the desk. "Maybe I should kill you right now. Send your body back to Devereaux and show him what happens when people threaten me." "You could." Lyra's heart hammered, but she held her ground. "But then you lose your leverage, and your organization loses faith in a boss who kills defenseless civilians instead of fighting the actual threat." Volkov's expression darkened. "You think you understand my world, little girl? I think I understand that you're trapped." She took a step forward. "You can't back down without looking weak, can't negotiate without losing face, can't kill me without losing leverage. So you're stuck. And stuck men make desperate choices. Like you walking in here? Like me offering you a way out that lets you survive." He studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a gun. "Here's my counteroffer," he said, pointing it at her head. "I kill you. I kill Devereaux when he inevitably comes for revenge. And I take over his entire operation." Lyra heard Lucien's voice in her ear, urgent. "I've got the shot. Say the word, and I end him." But she didn't say the word, because she saw something in Volkov's eyes. Calculation, not rage. This was theater, a test. "You won't pull that trigger," she said calmly. "Why not?" "Because you're a businessman, and killing me is bad business." They stood like that for 10 seconds, that felt like 10 years. Gun pointed. Everyone holding their breath. The room so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Then Volkov lowered the weapon. "You're braver than I expected," he said. "Or stupider, I haven't decided which." "Does it matter?" "No." He gestured to his guards. "Take her to the holding room. I need to think." "That wasn't the deal." "The deal is whatever I say it is." He turned away. "You'll wait while I decide whether Chicago is worth dying for." The guards grabbed her arms. Lyra fought, but they were stronger, trained. dragging her toward a door at the back of the room. She heard Lucien shouting in her ear, heard metal moving in the ventilation shaft. "Don't," she said urgently. "Lucien, don't! Stick to the plan!" But the plan was falling apart, and they were both about to die for it, and she realized with perfect clarity that this was how it ended. Not in victory, not in escape, but in the cold reality that love couldn't stop bullets and courage couldn't change men who'd chosen violence as their only language. They threw her into a windowless room. The door slammed, the lock engaged, and Lyra was alone in the dark, with nothing but Lucien's voice in her ear, saying her name over and over like a prayer that had stopped working. The darkness was absolute. Lyra pressed her back against the concrete wall, trying to slow her breathing, trying to think through the panic clawing at her throat. The room was maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. No windows. One door. The kind of space you put people when you wanted them to understand exactly how powerless they were. Lucien's voice crackled in her ear. "Lyra, talk to me." "I'm okay," she whispered. "Locked in. No guards inside." "Can you see anything?" "Nothing. It's pitch black." A pause. She heard him breathing, heard the strain in it. "I'm coming for you." "No, you'll blow your position." "I don't care about the position. Lucien, listen to me." She forced her voice steady. "This is still salvageable. Volkov separated me to think. That means he's considering the offer. If you reveal yourself now, it's over. We both die. If I don't, you die alone. Then I die alone." The words tasted like metal. "But you live. The organization survives. And maybe that's how this was always going to end." "No." The word was flat. Final. "I didn't burn the world down just to lose you in a locked room. I'm getting you out." Before she could respond, she heard footsteps outside. Multiple people. The lock disengaged with a metallic click that made her flinch. The door opened, flooding the room with light that burned her eyes. 2 guards entered, grabbed her arms, dragged her back out into the hallway. She didn't fight, saved her energy for whatever came next. They brought her to a different room, larger, with windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Volkov stood at the glass, hands behind his back, looking at the city like a king surveying his kingdom. "Sit," he said without turning around. Lyra sat. The guards remained at the door. Volkov finally turns to face her. "I've made calls, consulted with my advisors, discussed options." He moved to sit across from her. "And I've decided that Devereaux was right about one thing. This war is expensive, messy, bad for business." Hope flickered in her chest. "So you'll take the deal?" "I didn't say that." He smiled, cold and calculating. "I said the war is expensive, but so is looking weak. If I walk away because a 24-year-old girl delivered an ultimatum, every organization from here to New York will think I'm soft, will think I can be pushed." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I need a different arrangement." He leaned forward. "I keep Chicago. Devereaux withdraws from 3 of his territories and pays reparations for the damage his obsession with you has caused my operations. In exchange, I let you both live." "He'll never accept that. Then he'll die, and you'll die. And someone else will take over his empire while we both rot in the ground." Volkov's eyes were flat. "Pride is expensive, Miss Vale. The question is whether he's willing to pay the price." Lyra's mind raced. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't any scenario they'd prepared for. Volkov was offering terms that would humiliate Lucien, strip away everything he'd built, all to save her life. And he'd do it. She knew he'd do it. That's what terrified her. "Let me talk to him," she said. "No communication. You give me your answer now." "I can't speak for him." "You can." Volkov's smile widened slightly. "Because you're what he values most. If you tell me to accept these terms, he will. If you tell me to reject them, he'll come in here shooting and we'll all die together. So choose. Humiliation and life or pride and death." In her ear, Lucien's voice was tight. "Tell him to go to hell." She closed her eyes, saw the past 11 days flash by. The cafe, the mansion, the library kiss, the dining room dance, the night the compound was attacked, and she'd realized she loved him. Saw the future they could have if she just said yes. A life together, safety, the chance to be something other than casualties of a war they never asked for. But she also saw what that future would cost. Lucien spending the rest of his life knowing he'd bent, that he'd compromised, that he'd become exactly what his father had been, a man who chose survival over strength, who let fear make decisions instead of will. And she couldn't do that to him, couldn't take away the one thing that made him who he was just to keep him breathing. Lyra opened her eyes. No. Volkov's expression didn't change. You understand what this means? I understand that some things matter more than survival. She stood and the guards tensed. Lucien built an empire on never bending, on being the one man in this city who couldn't be pushed, couldn't be bought, couldn't be broken. If he accepts your terms, that's all gone. He becomes just another criminal who got scared. He becomes alive. He becomes less than alive. He becomes a ghost of what he was. She moved toward the window, staring out at the city lights. I grew up with nothing. Spent my whole life being invisible, being nothing, being less than. And then he saw me. Really saw me. Looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth burning the world for. Romantic, Volkov said dryly. Also suicidal. Maybe. She turned to face him. But I'd rather die as someone who mattered than live as someone who compromised everything that made them real. Noble words. Let's see if you still believe them when the bullets start flying. He stood, gestured to the guards. Take her back. Lock the door. When Devereaux comes, and he will, make sure it's a bloodbath. I want every person in this building to understand what happens when you reject my generosity. The guards moved toward her. That's when the lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, red backup lighting that turned the room into something from a nightmare. Alarm klaxons screamed. Through the windows, Lyra saw muzzle flashes from 3 directions. The auxiliary attacks. Right on schedule. Volkov's radio exploded with Russian voices, all of them urgent. He listened for 3 seconds, then looked at Lyra with something like respect. Clever, he said. Distraction tactics. Pull my people out to defend other locations while he's already inside. Military precision. He's had 11 years to get good at this. And you're about to watch him die for it. Volkov pulled his weapon. Guards, with me. Sweep the building. Find Devereaux and end him. They rushed out, leaving Lyra alone in the red-lit room. For about 5 seconds. Then the ventilation grate above her head exploded outward, and Lucien dropped through like an avenging angel. He hit the ground in a roll, came up with his weapon drawn, eyes scanning for threats. You said no, he said. I said no. You chose death. I chose you. She crossed to him, grabbed his jacket. The real you. Not the version that bends, not the version that compromises. The stubborn, impossible, beautiful monster who looked at me in a cafe and decided I was worth the world. He kissed her, hard and desperate, tasting like smoke and determination. We need to move. They know I'm here. Where are we going? Roof. Helicopter extraction in 4 minutes. They ran. The building was chaos. Volkov's men rushing through hallways, shouting coordinates, trying to organize defense against attacks from multiple directions. Lucien moved through it like he'd memorized every corner, every turn, every exit. His weapon came up twice, dropping guards who got too close, and Lyra forced herself not to look at the bodies. They hit the stairwell at full speed, taking stairs 3 at a time. Behind them she heard pursuit, boots pounding, voices yelling, the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. Keep moving, Lucien barked. They burst onto the roof into cold wind and open sky. A helicopter was already descending, spotlight cutting through darkness. Irina at the controls because of course she could fly too. 50 feet to extraction, 40. The roof access door exploded open behind them. Volkov and 6 men poured through, weapons raised. Down! Lucien shoved Lyra behind a ventilation unit as bullets chewed through the roof around them. He returned fire, precise 3-round bursts that dropped 2 men immediately. The helicopter touched down. Side door open, 20 feet away. Go! Lucien shouted over the gunfire. Not without you! I'll be right behind you. Go! Lyra ran. The world narrowed to wind and noise and the helicopter door getting closer. She was 10 feet away when she heard Lucien grunt behind her. She spun, saw him stagger, saw blood blooming across his left shoulder. He'd been hit, but he was still firing, still moving, still putting his body between her and the bullets. She reached the helicopter, Irina's hand grabbing her, pulling her aboard. "Where is he?" Lucian was 20 feet back, weapon empty, fumbling for a reload. Volkov stepped out from cover, gun raised, taking careful aim at the man who'd spent 11 years making his life difficult. Time crystallized. Lyra saw it happen in perfect clarity, Volkov's finger tightening, the angle of his weapon, the trajectory that would put a bullet through Lucian's head. Saw the choice she'd made in that locked room play out in real time. Saw the price of pride calculated in blood and bullets, and the man she loved bleeding on a rooftop. She grabbed Irina's weapon from its holster, raised it, fired. The recoil nearly broke her wrist. The shot went wide, missing Volkov by a foot, but it was close enough to make him flinch, to throw off his aim, to give Lucien the 3 seconds he needed to slam a fresh magazine home and return fire. Volkov went down, clutching his leg. Lucien ran. He dove through the helicopter door as Irina pulled pitch, and they were rising, the roof falling away, bullets pinging off armored undercarriage, but none finding flesh. They climbed into Chicago night, while below them Volkov's compound turned into a war zone, 3 locations under attack, coordination collapsing, an empire starting to fracture. Lucien pressed his hand against his shoulder wound, blood seeping between his fingers. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp, alert, tracking threats even as they escaped. "You shot at him," he said. "I missed. You bought me time." That was the idea. She took his face in her hands, checking his pupils for shock. "How bad?" "Through and through. I'll live." He grabbed her hand, held it against his cheek. "You saved my life. You've saved mine about 6 times now. Figured I owed you one. We're even then." Not even close. She kissed him while Irina flew them toward safety, and the city burned below, and everything they'd fought for hung in the balance of the next few hours. The safe house was actually a penthouse in the financial district. Anonymous, secure, with medical supplies and enough firepower to withstand a siege. The doctor who met them there was efficient and silent, stitching Lucian's shoulder while he made phone calls coordinating cleanup and response. Lyra watched from across the room, too wired to sit, too exhausted to stand properly. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her hollow and shaking. Her hands still smelled like gunpowder. She'd shot at a man tonight, tried to kill him, and the scariest part was how little she felt about it. "Drink this." Irina pressed a glass of whiskey into her hand. "You're crashing." "I'm fine." "You're not. But you will be." Irina sat beside her. "You did good tonight. Kept your head. Made hard choices. That's more than most people manage their first time in the fire. I don't want there to be a next time." "There will be. You're with him now. This is the life." "What if I want a different life?" Irina looked at her for a long moment. "Then you should have said yes to Volkov's deal." The words hit like a slap, because they were true. She'd had her chance to walk away, to choose safety, to choose normal. Instead, she'd chosen Lucien and everything that came with him. The doctor finished, packed his supplies, and left without speaking. Lucien stood, testing his shoulder, wincing but functional. He crossed to where Lyra sat and lowered himself carefully beside her. "It's done," he said quietly. "What's done?" "The Volkovs. Their organization fractured when we hit 3 locations simultaneously. Half their people surrendered. The other half scattered. Volkov himself is in custody. Federal agents picked him up 20 minutes ago. Seems someone sent them evidence of his operations." Someone? Someone who wanted to make sure this ended cleanly. He took the whiskey from her hand, drained it in one swallow. "Marcus. His last act of loyalty before I locked him away. He had files on the Volkovs going back 2 years, sent everything to the FBI. Will it stick? Long enough for them to tear apart his network. By the time he gets out, if he gets out, there won't be anything left to come back to." Lyra absorbed that. "So it's over. The war with the Volkovs is over. But there will be others. There are always others." He turned to face her fully. "That's what I need you to understand. This life doesn't stop. It doesn't get easier. Every day is a war fought in the margins, and eventually—" He trailed off. "Eventually someone wins," she finished. "Someone always wins." "Yes." "And you think it won't be you?" "I think the house always wins eventually. And I'm not the house. I'm just a man who got very good at pretending to be one. His hand found hers, fingers lacing together. But I also think that for the first time in 11 years, I'm not alone. And that changes the math. How? Because now I have something worth surviving for. Not just revenge, not just empire. You. He squeezed her hand. And if you want out, if you want me to set you up somewhere safe with enough money to never worry again, I'll do it. No conditions, no strings, just freedom. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Outside the windows, Chicago glittered like broken glass under moonlight. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, going to jobs, coming home to families, sleeping without armed guards watching their doors. She could have that, could walk away, could choose the safety she'd never had. But she'd be invisible again, would be nothing again, would spend the rest of her life wondering what if. Remember the cafe? She asked. When you sat down across from me and told me I was going to change your life? I remember. You were right. But you changed mine too. She turned to look at him, this beautiful, broken monster who'd seen her standing in the rain and decided she was worth burning for. You made me visible, made me matter, made me understand that surviving isn't the same as living. And what's your point? My point is that I choose living, even if it's dangerous, even if it's violent, even if it means I might die young. She brought his hand to her lips, kissed his scarred knuckles. I choose you. I choose us. I choose this life. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her close, careful of his shoulder, and held her like she was the only thing keeping him human. Maybe she was. Maybe that's what love did to monsters, made them remember what it felt like to be men. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her hair. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They stayed like that while the city breathed around them and the empire settled into new configurations, and somewhere Marcus sat in a locked room, understanding that mercy could be crueler than death. 3 months later, Lyra stood in front of a mirror adjusting a dress that cost more than her old apartment's yearly rent. Black silk, simple cut, the kind of thing you wore to charity galas and political fundraisers, and all the legitimate facades that monsters built to hide their teeth. Lucien appeared behind her, fixing his cufflinks. His shoulder had healed clean, leaving a scar he never bothered to hide. He looked at her reflection and smiled, not the cold smile she'd first seen in the cafe, but something warmer, real. You clean up nice, he said. So do you. Ready to meet the vultures? As ready as I'll ever be. The gala was being held at the Art Institute, and they arrived in a convoy that had been downsized to look less like an invasion force and more like normal wealthy people taking normal precautions. Lyra had learned to spot the difference. The guards who blended, the weapons that didn't show, the violence that dressed up in tuxedos. Inside, Chicago's elite circulated through galleries full of priceless art, drinking expensive champagne and pretending they didn't know exactly what Lucien Devereaux did for a living. Lyra had been to exactly 0 events like this before 3 months ago. Now she could navigate them with the same invisible efficiency she'd once used to navigate grocery store aisles. Mr. Devereaux. A silver-haired politician appeared, hand extended. Good to see you. Senator. Lucien shook his hand. Allow me to introduce Lyra Vale. She's been instrumental in some of our new community initiatives. The lie was so smooth it sounded like truth, because it was partially truth. Lyra had spent the past 3 months systematically transforming parts of Lucien's empire, forcing money into legitimate businesses, charities, community programs, things that made noise without making bodies. She couldn't erase what he was, but she could build something alongside it that looked like redemption even if it never quite got there. Charmed, the senator said, already looking past her for more important people. They circulated, made small talk, played the game. And when they finally escaped to a quieter gallery, Lyra let out a breath she'd been holding for an hour. I hate this part, she said. The parties or the pretending? Both. We could leave. And miss the salmon course? Never. She leaned against him, careful of the people watching. How much longer do we have to stay? Another hour. Then we're free. Free, she laughed quietly. Is that what we are? Lucien turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw the truth they both knew. No, but we're together. That's close enough. They were interrupted by Irina, appearing from the crowd with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to move through high society the same way she moved through war zones. "We have a situation." "What kind?" Lucian's voice didn't change, but Lyra felt him tense. "Marcus, he's asking to see you." "When?" "Now. He says it's important." Lucian exchanged a glance with Lyra. They'd kept Marcus in secure isolation for 3 months, comfortable but contained. He hadn't asked for anything, hadn't made demands, had simply existed in the prison of Lucian's mercy. Until now. "Where?" Lucian asked. "The West Wing, private room." They followed Irina through the museum to a section closed for renovations. In a room full of plastic-covered paintings and scaffolding, Marcus waited. He looked older, thinner, the kind of worn that came from realizing you'd lost everything that mattered. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You called. I came. That's all this is." Lucian's voice was flat. "What do you want?" "To apologize." Marcus's hands were shaking. "To tell you that I was wrong. About you. About her. About everything. I already know you were wrong. I know you know. But I needed to say it." He looked at Lyra. "You saved his life that night. On the roof. You could have run. Could have saved yourself. But you grabbed a weapon and you fought for him." "So?" "So I spent 11 years trying to make him into something that didn't need saving, trying to convince him that caring about people was weakness." His voice cracked. "And you proved me wrong in 3 seconds." Silence settled heavy in the room. "I'm releasing you," Lucian said finally. Marcus's head snapped up. "What? You're free to go, leave Chicago, start over somewhere else. I'll provide resources, connections, whatever you need to build a new life." Lucian's expression was unreadable. "But if you ever come back, if you ever threaten me or mine again, I'll kill you. Do you understand?" "Why?" Marcus whispered. "Why would you let me go?" "Because she taught me something." Lucian's hand found Lyra's. "She taught me that mercy isn't weakness. It's the hardest thing a man with power can offer, and I'd rather be the man who showed mercy than the man who couldn't." Marcus stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down his face. Then he walked to Lucian, and the two men who'd spent 11 years building an empire embraced like brothers, saying goodbye. "Be better than I was," Marcus said. "Be the man your father couldn't be." "I'm trying, I know." Marcus pulled back, looked at both of them. "Take care of each other. This world," he trailed off. "This world eats people who try to be good. Don't let it eat you." "We won't," Lyra promised. And then he was gone, walking out of their lives as suddenly as he'd tried to end them, and Lyra felt something settle in her chest. This was closure. This was the last piece of the past being laid to rest so the future could exist. They returned to the gala, finished the evening, played their parts, and when they finally escaped into the Chicago night, Lyra felt lighter than she had in months. "You let him go," she said in the car. "I did." "Why really?" Lucian was quiet for a long time. "Because I spent 11 years being a man who never forgave, never forgot, never showed weakness. And it made me powerful. But it also made me empty." He looked at her. "You showed me that there's another way, that being powerful doesn't mean being cruel, that showing mercy doesn't make you weak. Do you believe that?" "I'm learning to." He pulled her close. "With you, I'm learning to believe a lot of things I thought were impossible." "Like what?" "Like happy endings." Lyra laughed. "This isn't a happy ending." "No?" "No? Happy endings are for fairy tales. This is just..." She searched for the word. "This is just us, surviving, building something that might last, hoping tomorrow doesn't burn down what we built today." "That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me." "Shut up." He kissed her while the city blurred past, and Lyra thought about the woman who'd sat in that cafe 3 months ago praying her blind date wouldn't show up. That woman had been invisible, safe, small. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who'd looked at darkness and chosen to walk into it willingly, who'd killed and survived and learned that love wasn't about safety. It was about choosing someone despite the danger, not because there wasn't any. 6 months after the night at the Volkov compound, Lyra stood on the terrace of Lucien's estate, watching snow fall across the grounds. The gardens were dormant for winter, everything sleeping beneath white blankets. But come spring, she'd have them replanted. More color, more life, more evidence that beauty could exist alongside violence. Arms wrapped around her from behind. Lucien's chin settled on her shoulder. "You're thinking too loud." "I'm thinking about how we got here. Luck and bullets. And choice." She turned in his arms. "Every day we choose this. Choose each other. Choose to keep building instead of burning. Some days I still burn things. I know. But less than before." She touched his face. "You're changing, slowly. But you're changing. Because of you. Because you wanted to." She kissed him softly. "I'm just the excuse you gave yourself permission to try." They stood like that while snow fell and the empire breathed around them, and somewhere in the city people lived and died and never knew that the ruthless kingpin who controlled the weapons trade had learned to garden because a woman who used to stock shelves told him beauty mattered as much as power. "I have something for you," Lucien said. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Black velvet, the kind that held futures. Lyra's breath caught. "Lucien, it's not what you think." He opened it. Inside was a key. "This is to a house on the North Shore. Nothing huge, nothing ostentatious, just a place that's yours, where you can go if this life gets too heavy, where you can be invisible again if you need it." She stared at the key. "You're giving me an escape route. I'm giving you a choice, every day. Stay or go. That's always been your choice. And if I go, then I let you. Because keeping you against your will isn't love. It's just another kind of prison." His eyes were serious. "I love you enough to let you leave, Lyra, even if it destroys me." She took the key, held it, felt the weight of possibility in cold metal. Then she handed it back. "Keep it," she said, as a reminder. "Of what?" "Of the man you are now versus the man you were." She laced her fingers through his. "The old Lucien would never have offered this, would have built bigger cages with prettier bars. But you're not him anymore." "What am I?" "Mine," she smiled, "flawed and dangerous and still learning how to be human. But mine." He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of the kind of promise that men like him rarely made and kept even less often. But she believed him. Believed that whatever they were building together, empire or home or something in between, it was real enough to survive the darkness that had created them both. When they finally pulled apart, Lucien reached into his pocket again. This time, the box was smaller, the kind that definitely held futures. He opened it. A ring. Black diamond and platinum. Beautiful and strange and exactly right. "No cages," he said quietly, echoing the words from months ago. "No ownership, no chains. Just a choice. Stay beside me because you want to. Build this life with me because you choose it every single day." Lyra looked at the ring, at his face, at the empire spreading out behind them and the small rebellious garden she was planning, and the impossible future they were somehow creating together. "Yes," she said. He slid the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably known her ring size since the second week. "I love you," he said. "I love you too." She pulled him close. "My beautiful monster." "Your beautiful monster," he agreed. They stood on the terrace while snow fell and the city glittered, and somewhere deep in the estate's security center, cameras recorded the moment a crime lord proposed to a grocery store worker, and she said yes, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because she'd looked at darkness and found someone worth standing beside in it. Because survival wasn't enough anymore. Because loving a monster had taught her how to be monstrous too, not in violence, but in courage, in choosing danger over safety, in building something real from the ashes of everything that should have destroyed them both. The snow kept falling, the empire kept turning, and inside the fortress they'd built together, two people who should have been casualties learned how to be survivors instead. Not through escape, through choice, every single day. But, like, the end. Epilogue. 1 year later. The community center opened on a Tuesday morning in early spring. Lyra stood outside cutting the ribbon while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions she'd learned to answer without saying anything real. Behind her, the building gleamed. 3 stories of classrooms, job training facilities, childcare services, all funded by anonymous donors who were definitely not connected to organized crime. Probably. Lucian stood in the back, wearing sunglasses and a suit that screamed money, looking every inch the wealthy philanthropist rather than the weapons trafficker. Most people believed the performance. The ones who didn't were smart enough to keep their mouths shut. After the ceremony, after the speeches and photo ops and carefully managed press, they drove back to the estate in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that came from knowing someone so well that words became optional. "You did good today," Lucian said. "We did good." She squeezed his hand. "This is both of us. I'm just the money. You're the partner." She looked at him. "In everything." He smiled, and it still startled her sometimes. How much warmth had crept into his expressions over the past year. How the cold kingpin had slowly become someone who laughed at stupid jokes and helped her plant flowers, and fell asleep with his hand in hers like she was the anchor, keeping him from drifting into darkness. At the estate, Irina met them at the door. Marcus called. "What did he want?" Lucian asked. "To congratulate you on the center, and to say he's getting married." "He found someone?" "Apparently, some woman he met in Seattle. Normal life, normal job." Irina smiled slightly. "He says to tell you that mercy was the gift that let him find happiness." Lucian absorbed that, then nodded once. "Good for him." They spent the evening like they spent most evenings now. Dinner together, no business talk. Just 2 people learning how to exist alongside each other without the constant threat of violence. They still had guards, still had weapons, still lived in a fortress because that's what their life required. But inside the fortress, they'd built something almost like normal, almost like home. Later, in bed with moonlight streaming through windows and the world quiet for once, Lyra traced the scars on Lucian's shoulder. The bullet wound from the Volkov compound. Physical proof of the night everything changed. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "That cafe, sitting down across from me, starting all of this." He turned to face her. "Every day." The answer surprised her. "Really?" "Every day I regret that I didn't find you sooner." His hand cupped her face. "That I wasted 11 years being empty when I could have been looking for you." "Romantic. I try." He kissed her. "Go to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long." "What's tomorrow?" "Meeting with the city council. They want to discuss expanding the community programs." "Which means they want to discuss how much of your money they can access without admitting they know where it comes from." "Politics?" He sighed. "Almost as dirty as crime." She laughed and settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong and alive. They'd survived. Against odds that should have killed them both, they'd survived and built and chosen each other over and over until choosing became as natural as breathing. The empire still existed, still operated in shadows and gray areas, still required violence when negotiation failed. But it also built community centers now, funded scholarships, created jobs, did enough good to balance, if not erase, the harm. It wasn't redemption. It was just 2 broken people trying to be better than what violence had made them. And some days, that was enough. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling safe for the first time in her life, and whispered into the darkness, "I love you." "I love you too," Lucian murmured back. "My fierce, impossible, beautiful woman who saved me from myself." "We saved each other." "Yeah." His arms tightened around her. "We did." Outside, snow began to fall again. Early spring snow that wouldn't stick, that would melt before morning. Inside, 2 people slept wrapped around each other while